Do you like to work by yourself or with others? If I had to choose just one, then I'd probably choose to work alone. What do you do when you're having difficulty solving a problem? I usually take a short break. I found that this helps me think clear, and oftentimes I end up solving the problem. What do you do when you have a problem with the direct? In this situation, I believe communication is very important. I'll usually have a meeting with my direct on the problems I have. It's easier to work on a problem together when everyone involved is aware, so I always communicate the problems that I see. What do you do when you have a problem with your boss? I deal with different types of people very well, but if I have a problem that affects my work, I will openly tell my manager and the reason why it's bothering me. What do you do when you have a problem with your job? Whether I'm happy or unhappy, I'll always do my best work. If the problem I have with my job is affecting the quality of my work, I will identify the problem and then take steps to find solutions. How do you handle conflict? I treat most conflicts the same. I analyze the conflict and create a list of steps I can take to resolve it. By thinking about these steps and taking action, I found that most conflicts are easy to handle. Have you fired anyone? And if so, why? I had to fire one employee who continually failed to complete projects. Before firing this employee, I tried to work with him by motivating, encouraging, and even providing different work. In the end, nothing worked, and I had no choice but to let him go. What do you do when a worker is giving the team more problems than helping? If the problem is related to a difficult task that a coworker cannot solve, then I'll get all the team members to help out. But if the problem is due to laziness or unwillingness to work, then I'll inform my manager of the problem. What do you do when you're having difficulty solving a problem? I break down the problem piece by piece and try and solve difficult problems step by step. This approach helps me not to get overwhelmed by difficult problems. What do you do when you have a problem with the direct? I believe feedback is important to solve problems with the direct. I meet with my directs regularly and always provide suggestions on how to improve. I also use this time to work out problems we might have. It's important to let my directs know where I stand so they don't have to make assumptions. What do you do when you have a problem with your boss? I'm a very honest and open person, so anytime I have a problem with my boss, I always let him or her know. I make a list of things that bother me. I ask my boss for time to chat, and I reveal these problems and the reasons for them. I want to make sure I'm not being offensive or sound like I'm accusing my boss of anything. What do you do when you have a problem with a coworker? If I have a problem with a coworker, I believe it's so important to talk to them. Even if I'm the one with the problem, I want to know so I can be a better teammate. How do you handle conflict? I handle conflicts by analyzing them. I'm a very analytical person, and I feel all problems have a solution. I usually think about the conflict and find ways to deal with it. Have you fired anyone? And if so, why? The only time I had to fire someone was when an employee was continually late. We have a company policy of giving a verbal warning for the first 3 offenses, and then a written warning after the 3rd offense. I had many discussions about this problem with this employee, but it didn't help. In the end, we had to let him go. What do you do when a worker is giving the team more problems than helping? It's hard to deal with a worker that puts in great effort but slows down the team. I noticed it is best to tackle a problem early. One way I found that was helpful was to be more firm. This way, the project continues to move forward without so many interruptions due to small arguments. How do you get along with your subordinates? My relationship with my directs is very good. They're very open and honest with me, and I'm sure they feel that they can come to me with any problems. How do you get along with your coworkers? I've always had an easy time getting along with different types of people, so I never had a problem getting along with my coworkers. I consider many of them my friends. What do you do when you're having difficulty solving a problem? I always do my best solving difficult problems. If I have trouble, I will use resources around me, such as looking through the internet, asking coworkers, asking my manager, or looking through some books. What do you do when you have a problem with the direct? Because I'm the manager, I feel it's my responsibility to improve the relationship. If the problem is work-related, I'll narrow the problem down, whether it's with his working style or another type of problem, and assist in any way I can. This would also involve providing feedback and suggestions on how to approach problems. But if our personalities conflict, then I would try to be more understanding. What do you do when you have a problem with your job? In this situation, I ask myself why I'm having the problem. After identifying it, I work on solving the problem so I can be more efficient in my work. What do you do when you have a problem with a coworker? If I have a problem, I try to approach my coworker and let them know as professionally as possible. If I'm the one with the problem, I'll politely ask what I can do to improve the relationship. I found that proper communication solves many problems. How do you handle conflict? Whenever I'm confronted with a conflict, I always follow a simple process. I think about what the current conflict is, think of several ways I can deal with this conflict, and then take the best action after my analysis. Have you fired anyone? And if so, why? When I was managing a group of 4 people in my last position, I unfortunately had to fire one of them. The person was unable to perform at an acceptable level for a long period of time. Our company has a process in place of trying to grow our employees, empower them, and help them find their strengths, but nothing helped. I put the person on probation and explained that he will have to try harder. But after seeing bad performance due to a lack of effort for a long time, I had to fire him. What do you do when a worker is giving the team more problems than helping? I've been in this situation a couple of times. One time, we organized and distributed easier work to the worker with problems, but this is only a short-term solution. Most of the time, I end up spending a lot of time helping the person out. It might have been quicker if the rest of the team members did all the work, but I figure helping this person now will benefit us in the next project. Although this method doesn't work all the time, I really get excited when it does work. Then I know I really helped another person succeed, and this in turn helps the company. What do you do when you're having difficulty solving a problem? There are a couple things I do when I'm having a problem. Sometimes I try to focus so hard that I miss a point that would help me solve the problem. So I take a 2-minute break to help me approach the problem in a different way. I could either go get a drink of water or stand up and move around. I find that this helps me at times. But if I still continue to have problems, I don't mind asking a coworker for some assistance. I believe in using all the resources around me, and I think coworkers should use me as a resource as well. What do you do when you have a problem with your boss? I'm very open with my manager. I feel it's important that my manager knows about how I feel. I always start a conversation and try and solve our differences through professional conversation. What do you do when you have a problem with your job? It depends on the specific problem, but in most cases, I'll face the problem that I have with my job and find a solution. If I avoid the problem, it will always be there and my work quality will decrease. So I found that solving the problems immediately helps me in the long term. What do you do when you have a problem with a coworker? I've always been told that I'm a great person to work with, but if I were in a situation where I was having a problem, I believe I'd work on a relationship by being more understanding. How do you handle conflict? Whenever I have a conflict I have to deal with, I like to follow a simple process. I first identify the problem causing the conflict, think about solutions or ideas that will solve the problem, and then try and implement a solution. Although it's very simple, it makes sure that I'm not panicking, losing my temper, or losing control of the situation, and it prevents me from rushing into a decision that might make the problem worse. Have you fired anyone? And if so, why? Oh yeah, I fired a lot of people. All of the reasons were the same. They were not performing their jobs. I believe in good management. I believe I should mentor and help grow our employees. This is a business, and we need to do whatever we can to help our company grow. One of the biggest factors on the success of a company is having great employees, so I won't hesitate to fire someone who isn't performing their job. It leaves more room to bring in someone who will benefit the company. When do you know enough is enough when dealing with a subordinate that doesn't seem to be helping? I know enough is enough when I've exhausted all measures to help this employee grow. I would do my part by providing encouragement, giving extra instructions, mentoring, and giving different types of work. If I exhaust all these steps, then I know I can't do anything further, and that is when enough is enough. How do you get along with your superiors? I've had my share of great managers and mediocre managers, but I've always gotten along with all of them very well. I've rarely had conflicts with them, and if there was an issue, I always talked it over with them. What do you do when you have a problem with the direct? I believe in open communication. I always analyze the problem and then tell my direct clearly. I always provide steps that we both can take to deal with the problem. This approach helps me because it shows my respect. What do you do when you have a problem with your boss? When I have a problem with my boss, I don't like to keep it bottled up. I want to resolve problems so I can work efficiently without distractions. So I always talk to my manager about the problems that I have openly. What do you do when you have a problem with your job? If I have a problem that I can solve, I'll do everything I can to correct it. If the problem is out of my control, I feel it's important to let my manager know what my problems are. What do you do when you have a problem with a coworker? Well, it all depends if it's a personality conflict or an issue that is causing the problem. An issue is easy to deal with. I think I'd go and talk with the coworker, saying something like, "If you have some time, I think it would be good for us if we could talk about this issue." Starting a conversation to deal with the problem with a coworker is the hardest step, and if it's done properly, then the issue can easily be resolved. If it is a personality issue, then I would try to be more understanding and at worst deal with the problem by anticipating conflicts ahead of time to put myself in a position to either avoid it or to make it less of a problem. Have you fired anyone? And if so, why? I've never had to fire anyone yet, but if I'm in this situation, I would follow company policy and do it professionally. What do you do when a worker is giving the team more problems than helping? I follow a process of helping my coworker out any way I can. This can include assistance in their portion of the work or by encouragement. If that doesn't work, then we redistribute the work to make sure everything is covered. I believe it's important to let my manager know of the problem as well. Do you like to work by yourself or with others? That's a tough question. I like the combination of the two. It's great working in teams while getting and sharing ideas with each other, but it's also nice to sit at your desk and work hard productively. I like to do both, so it's hard to choose one over the other.